Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to week 21 of WiggyWam Get Your Property Questions Answered. I hope that you've all had a fantastic start to the week. We are heading rapidly towards the end of January 2023. Can you believe it? The first month of the new year is almost over. And I kind of wonder how everybody's getting on with their New Year's resolutions at the moment. Apparently, last week, there was some statistic that floated around that says that about 80% of people who started with great intentions to have New Year's resolutions and things that they wanted to change in their lives, that by the middle of the month, they have actually quit on those resolutions and given up already. So I hope that's not you. If you're watching this right now, I hope you're still committed and you're rapidly heading towards the goals and the resolutions that you set yourself, whatever they may be. I think one of the important things to remember as we go into these resolutions is that we are in fact human. And I think some of us have this, if you're anything like me anyway, you have this idea about everything flowing perfectly and everything being, in your mind, it's a very straight line towards your goal. I'm going to get up at 4 a.m. I'm going to go to the gym 7 days a week. I'm going to eat nothing but lettuce and drink water. That's the entire way of how the mind works. It's a very straight line towards your goal. And then by day 2, when you're exhausted because, you've done 2 days of the gym and you haven't perhaps done anything for a little while and you're sick of the sight of lettuce, then actually the momentum begins to wane and the enthusiasm towards your goal starts to disappear as well. So all I would say is that, be prepared for some kind of setback or failure as you go towards any goal or resolution that you may have set yourself. And always remember that it doesn't really matter. If you miss one day of training or you miss, let's say you've decided to give up alcohol and you decided to then go out for a drink with a friend that you haven't seen for a long time. It's okay to be human, and it's okay to stumble every once in a while rather than getting logged into this pattern of, well, so-and-so quit drinking and they gave it up for an entire year and they didn't miss a thing. And I've done 3 days and, I'm already back on the bottle. It does happen for people. And I think it's about the journey of being patient with yourself and understanding who you are as a person, and also understanding that you are in fact human and things do go wrong and things do happen. It's called life. And, just be a little bit more tolerant with yourself if you have not necessarily hit the key goals that you want to right now, but it's a great time to recommit. And as a great friend of mine once said, isn't it amazing that we all wait until the start of a new year before we set new goals or we set new resolutions? You can do that every day if you want to. You can make a commitment right now that actually things are going to change. We're going to start doing new things in our business, or we're going to start implementing a new customer service charter or whatever it might be. You can do that at any moment, at any time. Okay, so if there's something that you've just been giving yourself a hard time about because you've not quite met the impossible standards that the mind sometimes sets for you, I'm going to encourage you to put that all to one side. Be patient with yourself. You're a human being, not a human doing, as somebody once said to me. And hopefully that makes sense to you, as it did to me in the moment when they said it. But just recommit to that goal. Feel free to set a new goal. You can do that anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't have to wait till the 1st of January next year to recommit to that goal. And I thought we'd do something a bit different, actually, as we start this week's webinar. Because usually a lot of people, ask me questions and I get to answer them. But what I wanted to do this week was actually start slightly differently, and actually for me to ask you guys some questions, because I think, keeping this sort of theme in mind, if you like, of the start of the new year, and wondering about how you're going to go about building your business during the course of this year. And there's a lot of indicators right now that suggest that this market is going to change. Things are going to be a lot tougher in business right now. My good lady shared an article with me last week about the number of businesses that are on the brink of collapse, or are having the rug pulled from underneath them with sky-high utility bills and goodness knows what else. And it started to filter through that actually, the market's actually going to be quite tough, I believe. And we've had probably 5 or 10 years of a really good market, and we've all had, the opportunity to make a reasonable living from that. But the flip side is, things are on the cusp of changing. And what I wanted to start off by is asking a couple of questions, only 3. But I think these are really pertinent questions to perhaps mull over, chew over in your mind, and start to get maybe a little bit of clarity and direction on where you're going with your life and your business, and how these questions may or may not apply to you. I find them personally very challenging and quite exciting, actually, to answer, if I'm honest. So I'll just read them out, and then what I'm going to encourage you to do is, if you're of the mindset that you decided to put this video on in the background whilst you're on Facebook, or answering a couple of emails and all the rest of it, I'm going to encourage you to just put that all to one side for a second, maybe grab a pad and a pen, and start to write down a few thoughts as I ask these questions, because it is pertinent. And sometimes I think we don't give ourselves the full opportunity to grasp the true essence of what's being asked in these questions. So first question, close all those distractions away. First question is this, okay? How prepared are you for when the market changes? Okay, I'll just repeat that. How prepared are you for when the market changes? So it's not a case of if the market changes, the market will change. We know that, okay? If you've been in the property world for any more than about 5 minutes, you'll know that this market changes almost on a daily basis. But the key point is, we've had a very good market for a while. The market is beginning to change. There are signs that things are going to change quite significantly. And if you're not prepared for that, it's going to catch you unawares, and it's going to potentially have detrimental impacts to your business. Nobody was prepared realistically for a pandemic to come along. And that, bear in mind, that was only, I suppose coming up for 3 years ago now, but in very, very recent living memory, did the property market just stop overnight. And, going back to 2007, 2008, again, the market just stopped overnight in a heartbeat. So how prepared are you for when the market changes? Okay, what have you got in place? What are your plans that, if the market all of a sudden does slow down, or we have another credit crunch, or the bankers go out and gamble with all of your money, because it's never their own money they're gambling with, is it? It's always ours, but they're going out, they're gambling with other people's money, and they mess it all up again, and we enter another credit crunch situation, or there's a lack of trust between the banks, and therefore they all stop providing liquidity to the market, or whatever that's supposed to mean. How prepared are you for if those disaster scenarios happen? Would your business survive? Would you weather the storm? And I know there's a lot of agents in particular, as well as solicitors, who have been almost running on a bit of a knife edge with their business over the course of the last 2 years, because even though activity has been very good, the biggest problem they've had is trying to bank that cash or that commission, or get the deal across through to completion, and that has caused them a few headaches. So question number one, how prepared are you for when the market changes? Just jot some thoughts down. This is for your own, shall I say, private study, if you like, for want of a better word. I'm not expecting you to send me the answers to these questions. It's just what I think is pertinent for you to have a little bit of a think about, and mull over, and actually ask yourself the question that you've probably never asked yourself before. And if you're in business during the pandemic, you realized all of a sudden, actually, things can change very quickly. How prepared would I be should something like that happen again? Okay. Question number two is, if money was no object, would you be doing what you're doing for a living? And if not, is now the time to make a change? Okay, so I'll repeat that. If money was no object, would you be doing what you're doing for a living now? And if not, is it time to make a change? Okay, now what's the point of that question? Well, frankly, a lot of us are in positions where we're doing what we're doing in order to earn a paycheck or to earn an income. And that may not necessarily align with who we are at the core, and it may not necessarily align with our hopes and dreams. Perhaps when we started out in our life, in our working life, as a fresh out of school youngster, or somebody who's completed university, but in their heart they were probably an artist, but they were told to go and become a lawyer, for example. That might be an idea. Or somebody was told to become a surveyor. That was me. Where in their heart of hearts they wanted to be a writer, for example, or something of that nature. So, what is it that, if you had unlimited money, i.e. you won the lottery, would you still do what you're doing today? And that can be a real tell as to whether or not you'd still be invested in what you're doing. Would you still be running the business you're running? I spoke to a very successful person this week, who has had a very good life out of an agency, as it were. And you come towards the end of your life and you start thinking, well, actually, what would I be doing with this? And that leads me very nicely into question number 3, which is, what's your legacy? Okay, what is your legacy? A lot of us are on the treadmill where we're going out, earning money, and keeping a roof over our heads, which is perfectly responsible and perfectly okay. And I'm not criticizing any of that at all. But sometimes we don't ask that bigger picture question. What is your legacy? What is your legacy? What are you here to do? What are you here to leave behind? Because over a long enough time frame, there's 100% chance that all of us are not going to make it out of here alive. Okay, so at some point, we have to start thinking about, what's our legacy? Why were we here? What did we deliver to our children or our children's children or our future generations, if you like? And these, as I say, questions that we never really sit down to ask ourselves. And I'm giving you the space to maybe start to reflect on these questions and decide, whether or not it's time for some change. Does 2023 become the foundation stone upon which you launch a new direction for your business or a new direction for your career, or provide more opportunity for others because you've been fortunate because of the plans that you put in place years ago, and you want to bring more people through. These are all legacy ideas that you might want to think about. And for us, and I think I speak on behalf of myself and our team, one of our biggest legacy ideas and hopefully things that we want to make come true, which is why we're prepared to dedicate the next 10, 15, 20 years to this, is to actually make home buying and selling a lot easier, quicker, faster, cheaper, and easier for everybody concerned. And that's a big mission. That's a big thing to buy into. But we've seen over particularly my lifetime so far that buying and selling a house has just seemed to have got much longer, has become more time intensive. Whereas actually, in the late 90s, it was 6 to 8 weeks. You made an offer and you bought a house within 6 to 8 weeks, which is why I was always a fan of buying at auction, because, you could just go to an auction and you could just put your hand up and the auctioneer would hopefully drop the hammer and, 4, 5, 6 weeks later, you were the owner of that property. But what is your legacy? Is this something that you would buy into as an estate agent or as a solicitor or as a surveyor? Would you like to see the housing market improve? Would you like to see transactions get faster? Would you like to see homeowners less stressed when they come to sell their property? And would you like to see buyers less stressed when they come to buy a property? If you're anything like us, that resonates with you, right? So, if that is, you feel it's part of your legacy, we are here to make a difference. We are here to make a change. And I think it's one of the most rewarding things that you can do is to look towards leaving a legacy as part of the work that you do, because then you're working for something much bigger than just the take-home pay at the end of the day. So if our legacy that we're talking about here at WiggyWam makes sense to you, and it's something that you actually think, do you know what, actually I'd like to be part of that mission. I'd like to make the home buying and selling process a lot easier. I don't want to rely upon the government to bring those changes. I want to be proactive and bring those in right now, because they're there, everything's ready to go. It just requires more people to get on board with the mission and goes, actually, this makes total sense. This is the way things should be done. Okay. And, if that resonates with you and you want to be part of a group that is actually going to do something about buying and selling properties and make it a lot quicker, then we would love to hear from you. So please get in touch with us. Our email, happytohelp@wiggywam.co.uk. That's happytohelp@wiggywam.co.uk. Just put subject heading legacy in there. And we'd love to hear from you, and you can join our mission, and we can leave a true legacy, I believe, to future generations. All right. So hope that's okay, guys. Just wanted to start off this week by doing something a little bit different. Hopefully that resonates with you and gives you something to think about, and perhaps, as I say, questions that you've never really thought about before. But onwards and upwards, let's move on with today's webinar. Question number 1 comes in from Bev. Hi there, Bev. Thank you for being part of the amazing WiggyWam community. So Bev says, we have a property we are currently renting out to my sister. We've just been informed by our mortgage lender that they will not renew the consent to let, and said we need to either sell the house or get a buy-to-let mortgage. We're not in a position to get a buy-to-let mortgage, as they well know, so our only option is to sell the house. It has caused a huge fallout between me and my sister, as there is nothing local that she can afford. Is there anything she, as a tenant, can do to prevent the sale from going through? We will lose everything if we can't sell. The lender has said they won't tolerate anything they deem to be delay tactics to try and continue renting the house out without their permission. They also said they want it done quick, else they will take action. In a letter from them, they said if we continue to let the property, it's a breach of the mortgage terms and we would be taken to court for them to gain possession. I'm personally really angry with the mortgage lender for putting us in this situation, as they're not willing to listen when I've tried to reason with them. I feel like they are deliberately forcing us towards repossession. Can they do this? All right, then, Bev, that's quite a long question, and I'm sorry that you've been put into that position. I've actually known of a couple of people who have gone through a similar situation, Bev, if I'm honest. And one situation was a lady who her partner had died, her husband had died, and the mortgage and everything was in his name. Now, when he passed, she continued to pay the mortgage, as somebody who was responsible would continue to do so. And then I think it was like 3 years later or something, she got this letter out of the blue from a solicitor that says we're going to take the house back because we can. In effect, it was. They were completely ignoring the fact that there was no arrears, that everything had been maintained as it was. It was just the wife making the payments rather than the husband. And because of that, they got a bit shirty and they decided that they wanted to go towards repossession of the property. Now, that property was actually sold by a friend of mine. He stepped in and helped them to achieve a sale. But this is, I don't know why certain lenders are doing this. Really not sure. There's some talk in, shall we say, conspiracy theorist groups that there's a bit of an asset grab going on right now. I'm not so sure that may well be the case, but when somebody's acting like this, it's hardly acting as what we would call a responsible lender. And lenders are supposed to be acting with integrity and with honesty, with how they conduct themselves towards their clients and their customers. So I would argue that threatening to take back a property, and I'm assuming there's no arrears on here, Bev. You haven't said that in your question, so I'm going to assume that there's no arrears. They've just decided one day somebody's woken up with a bad head and gone, do you know what? This is a breach of our mortgage conditions, even though we've previously granted you permission to rent the property out. Okay, so it does seem that they're not acting with complete integrity, in my humble opinion. But what would I do if I was in your situations? Well, first thing I would look at is, is there a possibility that you could maybe sell the property to your sister? Okay, now I don't know whether she's got good credit or not, whether there's a situation where she might be in a position to be able to afford to buy the property off you. That might be one way that you could deal with this. And because there's a family relationship here, you might decide that you're in a position to help her out by gifting her some of the deposit to make the purchase easier for her. And what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, you feel the property is worth, let's use round figures, 100,000 for the sake of argument. You might decide that actually it's because of all the headaches and everything you've got going on and you just want this gone. If you gifted her 10% of the deposit, i.e. the purchase price would then be realistically 90,000. That's what you get minus fees, or even 80,000, for example. You could gift her a certain amount of equity in the property, and that might enable her to be in a financial position to buy the property. Now, you did ask, is there anything that she can do as a tenant to prevent the sale from going through? Look, I've had situations where I've tried to sell properties and there's been tenants in and they haven't been particularly happy about it for various different reasons. And, they have chosen to make life a little bit difficult. I'm not saying your sister would do this, but there's nothing to stop her as a tenant. As some tenants do decide to do, they stop paying rent and they batten down the hatches and they say, well, you'll have to throw us out of the property. And indeed, if they ring the council to ask for some advice about what to do in this sort of a situation, the council will say, well, we can't give you any housing or emergency housing. If you give up the property, you have to wait for a bailiff to come along and throw you out onto the street. Otherwise, you're making yourself intentionally homeless. Now, I think that's a totally crazy situation, but it does happen. And that's the guidelines that apparently the council are giving out to, well, certainly to people in our local area. Maybe different from where you are, but that may well be the position that she decides to adopt. I don't know. That's something to be aware of. You need to talk this through with her and hopefully try and mend the relationship. Gifting the deposit may help her to buy it. It's a bit of a difficult position for you, of course, but it might put you in a position where it actually helps to heal the relationship between the two of you. And you then have to put a figure on what's the relationship worth to you. Is it worth the 10 grand gift? And will it come back in the fullness of time to help you out? I don't know. But, if you start to get tied up in a where a bank is intent on pushing towards repossession, once those solicitors letters start, it racks up the, shall we say, the costs against the mortgage, and then they start to get you over a bit of a barrel. And this is what a lot of them will do, is that they then get the solicitors involved. The solicitors send you a letter every week at £200 a letter or whatever it is, and then they start winding things up towards a court proceeding, which by the time you get there, you're probably looking at £5 grand plus worth of legal costs that they've incurred, of course, which you've got to take a view on that, really. Is it worth getting into this sort of a position? So the sale might be to your sister might be the way forward. Whether that is via what we call a lease option or whether it's just a straightforward sale, I'd probably suggest a straightforward sale is probably easier, better, quicker for everybody concerned. And at least then you're in a position to keep the mortgage company advised as to what's actually unfolding. So you can say, look, we've had estate agents round, or we're actually doing this as a deal. This is what's going on. It does take a while to sell a property now, as you well know. This seems to be the more sensible route to go down. Can we agree that we will stop any kind of action and we'll keep you updated with what's going on? So it's about increasing that communication. Otherwise, if everything goes quiet, then they're going to put the gun to your head and say, well, we're going to start this action now, and that's going to cost you more money. Okay. I would say, God forbid, if it does get further down the line, if there are no arrears, you may well find that the county courts are, I'm going to say, reasonably lenient. It really does depend on the judge you've got on the day, to be honest with you. Some are reasonably lenient and they will listen. Others are, it's a rubber stamp exercise for them. They're doing 20 or 30 a day, and it's just, grant them possession as though they're handing out sweets at a party. It's crazy, really. So I would suggest that it's a communication exercise with them. Formulating a plan. First part of the plan would be talk to your sister, explain the situation again, let her know there might be an option that she can buy it. If not, then it might well have to be that it's got to go down an estate agent's route, and then you might be in a position where you can help her by providing a deposit for a new property that she might want to move into, or agreeing to pay 3 months of a rent. I'm not saying it's the fairest option, but what I'm trying to do here is what we call damage limitation, Bev. So you need to weigh everything up here, that the ultimate problem is you lose the property, you've got big legal bills to pay, you're being forced into a position of months and months and months of stress going through this. Or is it easier to look at, well, can I sell it quickly to my sister at a slightly reduced price, or can I do something else as a potential solution? One of the things people look at, Bev, in your sort of situation, is that they will that they'll open the local paper, or they'll go online and they'll look for quick property buyers and what have you. And coming from the property investment world as well, I can tell you that you've got to tread very carefully in this situation as to whether or not you're going to get somebody reliable who is one of these quick property buyers who will come along and actually be able to do a deal as quickly as you want it to, at the price that you want it to. That can be the challenge. Some are very good. I'll be honest with you, Bev, some are great. I've got a friend of mine who's great at this sort of stuff. He's very good at finding solutions for people's problems and getting a deal done quickly. I've heard of others who are, quite frankly, sharks and charlatans, and they will really take advantage of the situation. So you've got to be so careful. If you want more help on this, Bev, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to put you in touch with one or two people who might be able to help. I do have a good network of very good property investors who, if you decide that's the route you want to go down, they can probably help you. But the point is, communicate with them. Don't let this drag on. Don't let it start getting involved with solicitors' letters and all the rest of it. Put a proactive plan in place, whatever that might be. Sell to your sister, sell it privately on through an estate agent or to a property investor, and get the problem dealt with. If you can't refinance the property with somebody else, the other solution may be to move your sister out of the property, and then you might decide that you want to move back in, and that may bring you back into alignment with the what's it called, the mortgage terms and conditions, and then that may well negate any of the other action that's been potentially taken against you. So a couple of options to explore there. You might want to watch this video back again, Bev, just to sort of decide which way you want to play this. But there's plenty of room for maneuver, I think, first of all, with this sort of situation. But don't let it drag on too long, and don't start to get involved with that legal process, because it is very draining, and it does become a lot more stress and headache than I think you probably want. All right, so I hope that helps, Bev. Let me know if we can help or put you in touch with anybody else. Yeah, I'd be delighted to hear from you in the future. All right, Bev, good luck. Okay, moving on. Question number 2 is coming here from Malcolm. Hi there, Malcolm. Thank you for being part of the amazing WiggyWam community. Malcolm's question is, myself and my brother are sole executors of our parents' house. I've been left 65% and him 35%. He lives in the US, so he is agreeable to me buying out his share. My brother's share falls below 250,000, so shouldn't be any stamp duty to pay. I think it may just be a matter of filling out the land registry forms to transfer the land registry of the house from my deceased parents, brackets tenants in common, close brackets, over to me. Is that correct? Do I need a solicitor to show my brother has been bought out? The land registry have advised on the forms I need to complete, along with the documents I need to submit, such as parents' death certificate, probate, which all seem straightforward. And I did complete all 11 forms for HMRC myself, for my parents and the estate, and probate has been granted. Do we need a solicitor to handle this? All right, well, thank you for the question, Malcolm. It's quite in-depth, and it sounds like you've got your head screwed on as far as handling this situation. Obviously, sorry to hear about your parents' demise, but as I said right at the start of this webinar, we've got a 100% chance of not making it out alive from life, okay? So, as I say, sorry that you're in this position, but let's get into the question and understand where we are. The first point I want to raise is that you mentioned that your brother's share falls below 250,000, so there shouldn't be any stamp duty to pay. I would take some further advice on this, and perhaps some qualified advice on this, because my understanding is that with stamp duty, it actually applies to the whole of the property, not the bit that's not necessarily being transferred or the share. I could be wrong on that. I'll put my hands up if I'm wrong, Malcolm. Feel free to send that information over if I'm wrong. More than happy to be corrected, or by anybody else watching this, feel free to let me know. But unless you're a first-time buyer, which you haven't mentioned in your question, Malcolm, I think there may be, well, the biggest question is not necessarily stamp duty, it's actually inheritance tax, which, again, hasn't been mentioned, because I don't know the overall value of the estate that has been left from your parents. And if that is over the inheritance tax threshold, there may be potentially a claim for inheritance tax, or death duty, as some call it. So that's more of the one that you want to be aware of. And the reason I mention that is because if you're thinking about doing all of this yourself, Malcolm, you sound competent. I'm not doubting any competency issues here at all. What I am thinking about is, if something goes wrong, and I say this because I've done it myself. I told a story some webinars back now. I forget which one it was, but I actually did the conveyancing of a piece of land that we bought many years ago. And my father at the time just went, "Well, you're an estate agent, you know about property, do this." And I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, I'll have a go," as you do. And I actually got it wrong. What I'd actually failed to do was actually register the title at Land Registry, because I just didn't know. It was at the time when Land Registry was just starting to register everybody's titles. And because I wasn't a solicitor, I just didn't know, right? And so when it came to sell that piece of land several years later, there was an issue because the buyer's solicitor came on the phone to me, and I just thought, well, I did the kind of purchase myself, I'll do the sale myself, right? And so she rings me and she's like, well, can you tell me why it's not registered at land registry? And I'm like, don't know, it just didn't happen, right? And she's like, let's have a big sigh, and then you've got to address the issue, the elephant in the room, which is actually, this needs to now go to land registry. And there's a couple of complications and questions, and thankfully everybody was quite lenient with me, and there was no major issues. But the point of me mentioning that to you is, who do you go to if, God forbid, you get it wrong, and then HMRC come knocking and say, well, actually, you owe us this amount of tax, or you owe us this because there was a loophole in the tax law that you didn't realize, and they're going to come back and bite you for a bigger share of the estate. So that's why I would always look to go to somebody who's used to dealing with this on a day-to-day basis, because ultimately you've got somebody on the hook should things go wrong, somebody that you can sue at a later date, and also somebody who's competent enough to know what's going on and what should be done, and we'll sort it all for you. So my view would kind of be pay away the pain, Malcolm. Get somebody else in to sort that out. Give it to a reliable solicitor to do the actual final bits of the paperwork there. And then, I would take some guidance on this IHT, in inheritance tax, and also stamp duty issues, just to make sure that you're not going to fall foul of any kind of other complications that might rear their head in the future. All right, so that's how I'd approach it, Malcolm. Good luck with it all. Sounds, as I say, that you've got an interesting scenario there. And if you do fancy having a stab at it yourself, you might find there's a solicitor out there that will work with you and just say, well, okay, I'll double check your work and I'll charge you a reduced fee. It might happen. I'm not saying it will, obviously, because it falls under their professional indemnity insurance liability. So they may refuse to do that. But you can always ask the question, right? See what happens. All right, good luck with that one, Malcolm. Wish you the best of luck, and anything else we can do to help, let me know. All right. Thanks ever so much. Okay, moving on. Question number 3 comes in from Ian. Hi there, Ian. Thank you for being part of the amazing WiggyWam community. Ian's question is, my partner and I currently live on a very desirable street where properties rarely come up for sale. We've looked at old sales listings dating back to 2014 and 15 and have found some lovely flats and their sales prices online via Google. We know we could offer significantly more than they paid for the property to help them make a profit, and we're wondering if it's appropriate to send a letter to each flat. We are aware that people do this a lot for houses. However, with flats being inside a block, with no readily accessible letterbox bar knowing the address, we are worried this may come across as inappropriate. Any thoughts on this would be much appreciated. Okay, well, thank you for the question, Ian. It is something that seems quite an interesting project for you if you're looking for, I presume, what would be buy-to-let properties. And obviously, you know the area, you live in the area, they're going to be close by. You're probably going to want to be these. If you're a sort of new investor, you kind of want the mindset of, I know where the property is, it's only down the road from me. I can walk past it every single day to make sure it's still there, right? That tends to be the sort of mindset that investors go through when they buy their first property. But to answer your question, there is nothing to stop you doing leaflet drops to these particular properties. Obviously, gaining access to the block may be a bit of a problem. And there's a couple of things you can do if you want to be a little bit more astute. One is sometimes on these doors to these blocks of flats, they will have a tradesman's buzzer on the door where you can press the buzzer, and it usually opens once every 24-hour period to let people in. It's a bit naughty. I'm telling that, Ian, as a bit of a sort of sneak preview as to some of the things that we have done in the past as property investors to get you into the block. Sometimes we've bought properties in blocks where we've turned up, we haven't got the fob to let us in for whatever reason, and the tradesman button actually lets you into the building. So that is something you could do, and you could put mail shots in each of the letterboxes, a printed leaflet or something of that nature that lets people know that you're looking to buy properties in the area. Now, a couple of things I am going to say on this, Ian, because we've had quite a bit of experience of this over the years. Anybody who's looking to sell a property, if they get a leaflet through the door, they will usually prefer to sell it to a homeowner or somebody who's going to live in it as a home rather than actually to an investor. I think it's just human nature. It is the way things are. I think a lot of people seem to think that investors are greedy for whatever reason, or they get turned off by the idea that it's going to be bought and then rented out. So that's something to bear in mind. The other thing that you want to think about is that you have to be committed to sending these letters or leaflets over a longer time period, rather than just doing one leaflet drop and hoping that leads to you buying a property. I can tell you that on deals that we've done over the years, where you do a leaflet drop, you've got to do at least 7 before people start to realize actually they'll start to reach out and respond to your leaflet drop. It's very rare that you'll do one leaflet drop and you'll hit on the right person who's just thinking of selling their property at that moment in time. And it may well be that you do a leaflet drop and somebody rings you up and says, oh yeah, how much will you offer me for my house? And you go, oh, well, it's X. And they go, yeah, okay, thanks, but not interested. And they put the phone down, and all of a sudden you've got, okay, an entire period now where they might chew that over for 3 months, 6 months. You never know what's going on in the background in somebody's life. And as a consequence, you could be, 6 months down the line before they even think about engaging again in another conversation to talk about actually selling the property. Okay. So those are a couple of things that you can do. One of the things that we've done previously with leaflets is that leaflets can be quickly filed in the bin with people, because they think, well, I'm not interested in that. Everybody's very busy, right? So they go and pick up their post, they see the leaflet, they quickly file it in the bin, and the opportunity is lost. So one of the creative things that we used to do was to screw up the leaflet a little bit and put it into the letterbox, because the psychology is when somebody comes to the door to pick up their post, they're going to see the screwed up ball of paper. And of course, what does human psychology do? You're naturally curious, so you have to unfold the piece of paper to have a look, right? Just see if there's anything interesting written on it. And that's how you kind of get a little bit more of the attention of the homeowner. It's a bit of a trick, but it's whether or not you want to do that is entirely up to you. But what I would do, Ian, if I was in your position, is I would actually employ 1 or 2 good estate agents to flush out deals for you. And not every estate agent will do this, but there might be 1 or 2 in your area that you can go to and say, look, this is my criteria. I'm looking for properties in this particular road or this row, and I will pay you a fee if you find me 1 or 2 of these properties. Okay. Now, in the psychology of the estate agent, well, hang on a minute, I'm opening the door here to potentially some more business, where I've got somebody who will buy a property and will pay me a fee for doing so, and will potentially rent that property out through me as well. So all of a sudden, you can start to see that makes a big difference to their business. And they have the opportunity where not only can they put an advert on the internet, or they could put an advert in the local paper or in their shop window saying that we've got, Mr. I from wherever you are, Ian, looking for properties in this area. That can start to invite inquiries through a third party. And the reason I say this is important, Ian, is because when buyers and sellers start to interact, you've got to understand that most buyers and sellers aren't really familiar with the house buying and selling process. And so what tends to happen is there is, because the house buying and selling process is so fraught with complications, people can fall out very, very quickly. And this is why a good estate agent is worth their weight in gold, because they can help you navigate the entire process, without everybody getting frustrated and telling one another to F off and, the deal falling apart, because that is what happens. It's human nature. People get frustrated, the friction starts, and then everything falls apart. Okay. So a good estate agent will help keep that deal together through to completion so that you can execute the purchase of the property. Okay, so that would be a really good place to start, because you're sort of, again, paying away the pain. You're putting the work across to them so that they can earn money from doing the legwork for you. And the other thing to bear in mind about employing a good agent, Ian, is that there is a likelihood that they may have been to see one of these properties that you're looking at, and have may already had a conversation with the sellers or the homeowners, and they're thinking about selling at some point in the future. Now, it might be that a call from the agent that says, actually, we've got an investor who's looking to buy in that area. We've got somebody who's looking to buy a property in that area. They're very keen. They're cash. They can move quickly. Shall we arrange to show them round? That could be just a phone call that's needed as a warm introduction rather than just a leaflet drop that gets you through the door and allows you to buy that property. Okay. So what I would do right now, Ian, if I was you, I'd go to our website, which is wiggywam.co.uk/learn, LEARN, learn, and grab a copy of the hunting brief template. Okay, it's the hunting brief template. It's under the learn section there. And you can fill that out as a template and take that to the estate agents to give them a comprehensive list of exactly what it is you're looking for. Properties of this type, this is our max budget, this is exactly where we want to buy them. It sounds like you've got one or two streets where you actually just want to buy properties in that area, which is fine. And then you can give that as a comprehensive list to the estate agents that you're looking for. Yes, you're going to pay a fee for their work, but we always had a saying as property investors that the deal pays. And what that means is if you're buying the property through the agent, you're hopefully getting it at a better price than you would necessarily if it came on the open market and you were competing against 2 or 3 other potential buyers. And so the deal pays. If you're paying a £2,000, £3,000 commission to an estate agent, that's fine. But you're at the head of the queue for buying the property and not having to compete against other people. Okay. So I would grab yourself your hunting brief template. If you want to know more about this sort of activity, Ian, and how to get ahead of the queue, I'm going to encourage you to read a copy of Home Buyer Secrets as well, because I put all of the knowledge and information from many, many years of trudging the streets and buying properties in our local area and sort of tactics such as these that I've just outlined to help you get the right deal at the right price. Okay, so read a copy of Home Buyer Secrets. That's well worth a look at. If you go to homebuyersecrets.co.uk, again, you can grab a copy of that. All right. So wish you the best of luck with that, Ian. I hope you find some good estate agents to help you out there as well, because I'm sure that they will flush you out a good deal or two. Have a look on the WiggyWam website as well, because there may well be 1 or 2 agents in your local area there that you can be recommended to. Have a conversation with them, and hopefully there's a match made in heaven. All right. So good luck with that, Ian. Let us know if you need any further help, and we'd be delighted to help you out where we can. All right. Thanks for the question. So moving on, question number 4 comes in from Brian. Hi there, Brian. Thank you for being part of the amazing WiggyWam community. Brian's question is, we've just put an offer in on a property we desperately want. We're effectively first-time buyers as we sold our old home and moved into rented for the foreseeable. We did this firstly to go on a road trip without any strings, and secondly to make sure we could move fast on our return should a property come up that met our requirements. I'm reading all kinds of things on the internet about things going wrong, and it seems loads of sales fall through. We don't want this to happen. What can we do to ensure the sale goes through and also to protect ourselves if this happened? Okay, well, great question, Brian. Thank you for that. Good that you put yourself in this position, Brian, because one of the things I'm seeing at the moment is that if you've got a long chain, and a chain is basically the number of people that want to buy and sell a property simultaneously, the longer that chain, the higher the likelihood is of a deal falling apart. And it might not necessarily be your deal, but it might be somebody further up the chain where things fall apart and then people can't move for whatever reason. Very different to the Australian home buying and selling process, where people very rarely get caught up in chains because they sell, go into rented, then wait for the right property to come up and then buy, which is effectively what you've done. So you put yourself in a good position, Brian. You're effectively a cash buyer or a cash with a mortgage buyer, which means most estate agents will class you as a hot buyer. If you don't know what that means, read Home Buyer Secrets. It'll tell you more about that. But there's basically less complications with you as a potential buyer. You've already got the property that you say that you desperately want. So now you just need to put a framework in place to make sure that this deal stays together and you get the property that you've set your heart on. So a couple of things I'm going to suggest you do. It doesn't look as though the offer's been accepted yet, which is perfect, because you can now get what we call a protect your pocket policy. Okay, a protect your pocket policy in place, Brian. And what that will do is, God forbid, this deal falls apart and you're 6-8 weeks into the process or 12 weeks into the process. and you spent out money on solicitors and surveys and goodness knows what else in the pursuit of this property, then the protect your pocket policy will pay out up to £2,000 of your expenditure in connection with this purchase if the whole thing falls apart. Okay, now that is not an expensive policy. It's a complete no-brainer. Okay, and it is well worth getting in place because at least 1 in 3 deals are falling through at the moment. And you might be lucky, you might be one of the 2 out of 3 that goes through with no complications or no problems. But why would you want to take that risk? Because, and here's the big problem, Brian, and we've had this with other people in the past where, they've gone through the purchase process once and they've lost the property. They've then gone through it again and then they've lost that property. And for whatever reason, these things happen. It's beyond my intelligence to work out why these things happen. Sometimes it's God, sometimes it's an issue with the property. I'm not quite sure. But the point is, if you've lost £1,500, £2,000 on the first purchase because that didn't happen, and then you've gone to another property and you lost another £2,000, you can start to see how this gets very expensive to move house, right? So pay away the pain, get your protect your pocket policy in place, and that will cover you. God forbid, should anything go wrong with the property purchase. It will also give you massive peace of mind in terms of if anything goes wrong, you're covered. Okay, so that's a huge thing. Second thing I would encourage you to do is to jump on board with their conveyancing concierge service. Again, looks like you haven't got to the point of instructing solicitors yet, so I'm going to encourage you to get on board with the conveyancing concierge service. That will be a fast track process to get you to exchange of contracts within 6 weeks. Okay, it's purely designed to get you through to exchange of contracts within 6 weeks. And you're going to pay a little bit more of a premium, but it sounds like it's worth it for you to make sure that you get the property that you want. Okay, so I'm going to encourage you to think about that. The other thing you might want to think about, Brian, I'm going to throw it out there as a bit of a curveball because you probably weren't expecting this as part of the answer. But if you want things to happen on this particular property, and it is the one that you've set your heart on and you just really, really want it, you might want to consider as part of the deal and as part of your offer, should I say, that you pay the seller's legal fees as long as they go with a solicitor of your choice. And the reason I mention this, Brian, is because the biggest common complaint at the moment is the length of time it takes for a deal to go through the legal channel. Now, I'm not blaming lawyers when I put this to you, okay? I'm just telling you what a number of people are saying, both buyers and sellers and estate agents and others in the property industry right now. And if you've got a solicitor that wants to get you to exchange of contracts within 6 weeks, okay, wouldn't it make sense to also have a solicitor on the other side who also has the same goal, and not one who is potentially a stack 'em high, sell 'em cheap factory conveyancing service, who you're going to be one of 200 clients that a solicitor is dealing with, and they don't care whether you move next week, next month, next year. Probably sounds a bit harsh saying it like that, but that's the reality of the situation. So the common goal for you to spend a little bit more extra money, but you would put yourself in a position where you've got 2 solicitors who are acting under essentially your instructions, but the one party is really acting for the seller, but you're agreeing to underwrite their legal fees if they will get this deal complete within 6 weeks. Then that to me seems like a complete no-brainer. Again, allows you to fast track the deal through to completion and get you moved with much greater confidence than I would have in any other way of buying or selling a property at the moment. I'm just being frank with you, okay? That's exactly what I would do if I was in your position. The final tip I'm going to give you, Brian, and this is a bit wacky, this is a little bit out there, and I did write a book about this quite a few years ago now. It's called Love is the New Religion. It's very, very different to the other books that I've written in the past about property and all the rest of it. But it's called Love is the New Religion. And I'm going to encourage you to have a little read of that. It's more of a spiritual book, I'll be honest with you. And the reason I'm suggesting this, Brian, is because sometimes what I've noticed with human behavior is that when we really want something to happen and we really, really want it, and we get really worked up about it, and we place so much importance on something happening the way that we want it to in our mind, obstacles tend to appear out of nowhere and stop us from getting it. Okay, so if there's high anxiety, high stress, high desire, high importance, in my experience, a lot of things happen where, obstacles, as I say, appear out of nowhere and challenges come out of nowhere and kind of stop you from getting the result that you want. And the idea being is, if you lower the importance and you're just like, you know what, if this is the best house for me, then it will happen without an issue. And if it's not the best house for me, then I might have to let it go, but something else will come along that will be better. And it's very easy to say this sitting here in front of the computer screen, Brian. I appreciate that. But you might want to try it on for size when you go through this journey, because it is enormously stressful buying and selling a property. We know that. It's one of the top 3 stressful things in the world that people go through, right? But doing it this way, lowering the importance, lowering the stress, lowering the pressure that you're putting on this whole thing happening, may be just what you need to ensure that it goes through. It's a bit of an esoteric way of looking at it, but I've tried it myself and it seems to work. And I'll give you a close to home example. My good lady, she's a GP, and she. We were talking about this because we went for a walk with the dogs the other day, and she's just been nominated to become a fellow. Okay. And it was one of these things where she was like, it came out of the blue. Somebody said, I think you'd be really good. I think we should put you forward for it. And she's like, okay, maybe not. We'll see. Wasn't really all that kind of fussed about going for it. Completed all the paperwork, sent it in. And I kid you not, within about, I think it was like 7 to 10 days, they came through and said, "Congratulations, we're pleased to let you know that you've been successfully nominated and you're going to go forward." And I was like, "Wow, that was really, really quick." And she scraped into the deadline within, I think it was like a few hours for the deadline for this certain set of applications that had gone in. And the point is, she was kind of okay if she got it and still okay if she didn't get it. Do you know what I mean? Okay with both outcomes, but there wasn't all this stress and anxiety of, oh, what if I don't get it, this, that, and the other. It just kind of happened, and it happened really, really quickly because there was less importance and less kind of stress around that sort of scenario. Does that make sense? So I hope that helps you, Brian. As I say, it is a bit of a wacky way of looking at things, but it's kind of one of the things that, I've been in that position myself where you put so much stress and intensity and pressure on trying to get things done. And then when you step back, you realize, actually, we're not in control of any of this. So what's meant to be is what's meant to be. Turn it over to a higher power. If it's meant to be, you'll get it. If you don't, then the way I look at it, Brian, is that, if I don't get something that I want, life is generally steering me away from something potentially bad that could happen. Okay. So we just have to kind of go with the flow. They call it going with the flow, don't they? So that is my revised way of looking at life now, which I think is actually quite important. Okay. So good luck. Hope it all works out, but keep me posted. Anything else that we can do to help you, let me know, and I'll support you through that journey. All right. Thanks, Brian. Right, moving on. Question number 5 comes in from Lynn. Hi there, Lynn. Thank you for your question. Lynn says, I'm thinking of selling a piece of land next to my home to raise some cash to pay down our mortgage during the cost of living crisis. We want to get the most we can for the land for obvious reasons, but we're wondering how best to do this. Should we invest the time and money to get planning? We think it's what some people would term an infill plot, as it's between us and the next door property, and there's definitely space to fit another home. Would somebody buy it without planning, and would we get the best price if we went down this road? All right, well, thank you for the question, Lynn. Great that you're thinking along these lines, although it's unfortunate that you're looking at it from this cost of living crisis situation rather than perhaps another angle. But I totally get where you're coming from. Sounds like you've identified that this is a potential infill plot, which is one of the most common ways that you would get planning permission, is because it's between you and another property, and providing it's not in a green belt area, there's seems to be a much higher chance of you getting planning permission for that infill plot. Now, what I would do if I was in your situation, Lynn, you've got to balance up here, getting the most for the land against the time it's going to take you to realize that gain. Okay. And what I would do is I would talk to at least 3 estate agents in your area. okay, and get their feedback on it. Because the reason I'm suggesting you talk to them is because they will have a lot of knowledge and a lot of contacts about who may be looking for a piece of land to build their own home, or as a builder or developer who will build it out and sell it on for a profit, perhaps. Okay. So, do they have the contacts that could help you either get the site sold or get you through outline planning permission as soon as possible? Okay, that would be a sensible place to start, because they already have the channels of communication open to people that would be interested potentially in buying. Then, if they have got the contacts that can help you get the planning, it's then worth running a few numbers with a couple of architects or maybe one or two architects, and saying to them, what are we looking at realistically for the overall costs of going for planning permission? So you've got your planning application fee, you've got your cost of doing the drawings and everything else to get in there. Are there any other restrictions that you're going to have to meet? Are there any feasibility studies, any land investigation studies that will be required? This is normally for detailed planning, but you just never know with certain councils. They might have certain conditions that architects know, and they say, yeah, do you know what? If we're going to go for planning with this particular local authority, they're going to request all of this sort of stuff up front. And you've got to understand that it may take several months for a planning application to go through. So if I was in your shoes, Lynn, and you want to get the most out of it, but lower the risk, I would look at potentially selling it without planning permission, if that's what your contact suggests is the best way to do it, because they're local to you and I'm not, all right? But I would offer some form of seller finance in the sale of the property. Now, a lot of people won't do this, Lynn, because they go, do you know what, just give me the cash, I don't want any of that headache and all the rest of it. But there's an important thing to think about here, Lynn, is that if you were going to go down the seller finance route, and that basically means you would grant them, it's a paper exercise basically, but you're effectively, if the plot's worth, let's say 150,000, you might say, well, I'll finance 50,000, or I'll finance 100,000 of the purchase of that plot. Okay, so let's say, for example, a homeowner comes along and says, yeah, I want to buy that piece of land. I've got 50 grand that I can put down. Okay, and you'll seller finance the 100,000. Well, think about it this way. Let's say you did it at 5% on a rate for the finance. Okay, so effectively, when the transaction goes through, you would get the £50,000 from the buyer, and then you would finance the 100,000 on a note. They call it a note. All right, for, let's say you did it over 10 years at 5% interest. Now, what that does is it gives you a lump sum of cash up front, and it gives you £100,000 that you've kind of created out of nowhere, and you're getting paid 5% per annum on that £100,000 over the course of the next 10 years. Now, that's a nice little income for you to get into your back pocket, which may be better than actually selling it as one lump sum. Okay, then you want to think about that. The interest of that 5% over the course of 10 years, if you put it into what's called an amortization calculator, you might be really impressed with the amount of money that the buyer will actually pay you over that 10-year period, because it's not 100 grand. It's 100 grand plus 5% compounded over 10 years. Okay, I don't have an amortization calculator to hand, because I'd love to do the numbers on this one, Lynn, but I think if you do that, just Google amortization calculator, then put the numbers in and see what that comes up with, because a lot of sellers, as I say, just completely overlook this. But you're the one holding the equity, okay? You're the one who has got this piece of land. Hopefully you can hive it off from your property without too many complications. Again, your lender may or may not have, if you've got a mortgage on your current property, they may or may not have a say in this. But if you can hive off that piece of land, you've created the opportunity, you've created the equity there. And that's the way I would look at it, because the ultimate point is, you are protected because you would ask for a first legal charge over the land, okay? And that effectively grants you the right that, should they not keep to that payment term over the course of 10 years, I would do it 3 strikes and you're out. If you're in arrears more than 3 months, we get back immediate possession of the land, okay? And then you're protected. That's all written up in a loan agreement. It's all written up with a legal charge that's registered at Land Registry, so your interests are protected. Okay, something to think about. I've done it myself. It's a very very useful way of selling land at an increased price, and that pays you an income over time and gives you some cash up front. All right. And there's various different ways you can do this, Lynn. You could take a small chunk up front, payment terms over a course of a year, and then what they call a balloon payment at the end. So again, that £100,000 could be, sorry, £150,000 could be 50 grand up front, 100,000 financed at 5% over 10 years, but that might be structured in such a way that they pay another 50 grand on the back end as a balloon payment, so you would have 50 at the start, 50 at the end, and then that remaining 50 would be financed at 5% over the course of 10 years. All right. So many different ways to think about this, Lynn, but I'm planting that seed so you can open your mind as to a different way of looking at things. The other thing you could think about is whether or not you do what's called a joint venture. So if a builder was interested in the land, again, you could do a joint venture with them. You provide the land, they provide the materials for the building, they do the building, and then once it's complete, you've agreed to sell it, and then you split the profit. Okay, that could be one way to look at it, if you can find a reliable and trustworthy builder that you can do that with. The challenge with that one, of course, is what if the builder goes bust when they're halfway through the build? Let's say you get to roof level and they go bankrupt or whatever. Again, you want to put this into a proper registered legal charge against the land, and again, part of the agreement that if that happens, you've got first dibs to go in there, finish the house off, and then get it sold to recover your funds as well. All right, so many different ways to look at that, Lynn. That's what I would be doing. Plenty to explore and kick around. I'm more than happy if you want to send me a bit more information, Lynn. I can drill down a little bit deeper into the situation that you're faced with there and see if I can do anything to offer a bit more value. But certainly keep your mind open to the opportunity, and hopefully that sparked a couple of ideas that you can do that will really help you out. All right, Lynn, good luck. And finally, question number 6 comes in here from Simon. Hi there, Simon. Thank you for your question and for being part of the amazing WiggyWam community. So Simon says, I have just read an article about the conveyancing process. I'm a manager of a law firm, so found this particular article disturbing. Basically, they blame us for all the failings in the system. I'm aggrieved by this as we work really hard for our clients. Why are we all tarnished with the same bad reputation? Why are there no industry leaders speaking out for us? We provide an exceptional service and we pride ourselves on that. Why are other firms not doing the same? There is profit in this, you just have to provide a good service. It really is that simple. All right, Simon, well, thank you for your question. And sorry to, there's a bit of an undertone of discouragement there, I think, and a bit of frustration with what's going on. It is unfortunate at the moment that a lot of solicitors are being bashed, shall we say, for the delays in the house buying and selling process. And that is unfortunate because, you guys as conveyancers do perhaps, I won't say the most important bit, but the bit that, very few other people can do. And because of the lengthy delays that have been incurred over the course of the last 2 years in particular, it is, unfortunately, you guys are catching the brunt of it. And, having looked at a number of law firms, Simon, behind the scenes, not just, speaking to them on the phone, all the rest of it, but having looked behind the scenes at a number of law firms, I can tell you that a lot of them are struggling, and they're struggling because they don't operate their business as a traditional business. And what I mean by that is they don't have sales and marketing departments, that can help them sell their services at a much higher fee than they might otherwise be recovering from their services. As a consequence, a lot of them tend to compete on price, and they fall into this trap of going, well, they're charging £750 for conveyancing, we'll do £650, and therefore we'll win more business. And they win this business, and they don't realise that it's completely unprofitable for the business, because they don't actually know, when you ask them the question, how much does it cost you in professional time for you to get a deal across the line in terms of a sale or a purchase. And I guarantee there's probably not 1 in 10 conveyancers who can actually answer that question. Again, I'm not bashing conveyancers here. I'm not jumping on the bandwagon here. But what I'm telling you is that a lot of them aren't looking at the right way to run their sales and marketing as a traditional business would do. Okay, they were never taught it at law school, and that's probably the biggest headache. Now, what I am seeing, Simon, and I totally agree with you on this, is that we seem to be a bit of a lone voice in the wilderness, if you like, in terms of our belief, and I state this categorically, that solicitors should be paid more. Okay, solicitors should be paid more for the work that they do, in terms specifically in relation to conveyancing. And I believe that, first of all, because as I've just outlined, a lot of the work that they do is unprofitable. And I've seen this with massive firms, not just small firms. I've seen this with big firms that are losing money on every leasehold conveyance that they do, and they don't realize it. Okay, so it's not just the small end of the scale, it's the bigger end players as well, that they're losing money. But also the big kick in the pants, if you'll pardon the expression, is the professional indemnity fees that are going up. And they're going up like 20, 30, 40, 50, 100% per year for certain firms. And that's unsustainable in any business model. You can't maintain the same level of fee and have one of your most important cost bases go up 20, 30, 40, 50, 100% over the course of 12 months. It's just completely unsustainable. And this is why I'm frustrated that from what I can see, and again, if I'm wrong on this, please, hold me to account, send me the articles and let me know that I'm not on my own. But we seem to be one of the few bodies that's actually calling for solicitors to be paid more, and not one professional body is calling for conveyancers to be paid, shall we say, a living wage, or to be called to, none of the gurus in the industry are saying, yeah, do you know what? Actually, bench line fee or minimum fee for a conveyance should be £1,000 or 1,200. Nobody's saying that, okay, other than us. I'm not quite sure why that is. That you would think that they've got all the knowledge and experience to understand the industry as a whole, but from what I've seen, again, it's a very limited snapshot based on their experience within the firms that they've worked for, and not in the industry as a whole. Okay, and I'm hearing other things as well, Simon, which you probably read in the similar sort of articles. I'm hearing very weak opinions by certain professionals in the industry who are saying, well, you just need to invest more in technology. I'm like, well, how does an investment in technology help a firm when their professional indemnity insurance has just gone up 50% in the last 12 months? How does that help? And where is the professional bodies that are calling out for a freer market as far as providing professional indemnity insurance to all of the law firms that are out there? Again, I'm not hearing it. Again, if I'm wrong, feel free to send me the information. But these are the things that are crippling law firms and causing them to go out of business. And it's really frustrating to see this happening, and for them to be almost fed to the walls because nobody's standing up and saying, actually, this is what we need to do. There's a widespread failure in the industry to adopt things like sellers packs, and this is in the agent's benefit as well as the solicitors. And some some gurus out there are saying, well, sellers packs aren't going to solve the problem. And I'm like, okay, well, if a sellers pack shaves 2 weeks off the average conveyance, that's about a 10% reduction in timescales. That's a pretty good start, right? In terms of making things happen. So it's in everybody's interest to start to adopt all of this information, because what's actually happening in the background is, and really where the government's looking, is how to regulate the industry into compliance. And that's the last resort that we need in this situation, where solicitors are leaving the industry in droves, and they are getting more and more frustrated with the amount of time they're spending on compliance rather than actually doing the work. So regulating the industry into a straitjacket is only going to hurt buyers and sellers more. Okay, it's only going to hurt the professionals who are trying to do the job for their clients. And I'm sitting here going, okay, either we're very, very, very wrong, or all of the evidence points to more upfront information, pay the solicitors a living wage so that they can actually take on less work, do a better job and in a more thorough job in a shorter period of time. Surely those are two pretty major things that the industry ought to be jumping all over and working on to solve. In my humble opinion, what I'm seeing, and I'm very passionate about this, Simon, as you can probably tell, but what I'm seeing is more of a push for regulation and not really truly addressing the issue from the people who are paying our wages, which is the buyers and the sellers ultimately. And if they're not getting a good service, what's the likelihood of a buyer or seller returning to that law firm to then give them more work or recommend them work from their wider network. It's just not going to happen. So I do get frustrated with the situation. Probably not as much as you guys do when you read articles that are bashing you. But I do believe wholeheartedly that it's not just the solicitor's fault. You guys unfortunately cop a lot of the blame, but there's issues again with land registry, trying to get titles registered there and transferring from one party to another. Huge backlogs, and probably the biggest frustration I'm seeing right now is there's again, unless I'm really off the mark here, and I'm not so sure that I am, there's a real lack of long-term thinking, and there's a real focus on solving problems that were existing 2 to 5 years ago, and the market has moved on a lot since then. And what we're looking at is, how do we solve the future problems that are already coming down the track towards us that are going to put firms out of business unless we address them right now? That's where our heart and soul is at WiggyWam. And this is why we want to work alongside proactive agents and proactive solicitors to help them all make a better living, and to help our legacy, which is leaving the property market in a better state than we found it, which is to make transactions happen a lot quicker than 26 weeks. 5 months to buy a house, in my view, is abhorrently long in terms of a time frame. So I don't know. I get frustrated probably as much as you do, Simon, in all of this. But the question I ask, and this comes right back to the very start of our webinar today, is how prepared is the industry for when the market changes? And that question really boils down to everybody who's involved in buying and selling properties, because when the market stops, or when the music stops, I don't think it's going to look pretty for a lot of businesses. If you look at what's happened over the last few years, a lot of businesses have had to take on some form of debt in either a bounce back loan or a COVID loan of some sort. Very few have got grants. They've actually gone down the loan route. They've saddled their business with more debt. The timescale to get paid has extended because of the increasing transaction times in the property market. And so cash flow is becoming more and more stretched. The cost base, particularly for law firms trying to get conveyancers through the door who are qualified, who know what they're doing, is starting to escalate. Professional indemnity insurance is starting to escalate. All of a sudden, a business that was running at 10-15% profitability, which is good for most of the conveyancing firms that I've looked at, all of a sudden that profitability is gone. So how do you keep the doors open when your cost base is increasing and your income isn't? These are the sorts of questions that keep me up at night, Simon. So you'll have to forgive me, but I am very, very, very passionate about this, and I do believe there should be more people joining forces with us to promote more profitable conveyancing, to promote more profitable estate agency, to put an end to the low fee work, which clearly is a broken business model, in my humble opinion. And we need to get a focus on quality and speed of service rather than, stack them high, sell them cheap, and the budget ends of the market, So I hope that helps, Simon. I don't know whether I really answered your questions in all of that, to be honest with you, but why are you tarnished with the same bad reputation in all of this? Look, I can only apologize on behalf of the entire industry, but there are exceptional people like you. It sounds like you're a beautiful conveyancing service that provides good value for money, and you do offer a good service, and you're profitable, which is a great place to be. Those are exactly the kind of firms that we want to work alongside within WiggyWam. And, I really believe that as the market changes, a lot of these problems are going to get washed out, and they're going to get washed out in the worst possible way, because the market is the ultimate decider as to whether or not a business is going to be successful. So let's see where things go, Simon. I wish you all the best of luck with your business. And if anything that we can do from WiggyWam's side to help you, address that imbalance, as you put it, then please do let me know, because it'd be a delight to work alongside more people like yourselves. All right, so good luck with that, Simon. And I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for all the amazing questions that we've had in this week. There's been some quite challenging ones to deal with there, and I really enjoy this kind of process. I apologize if I've got on my soapbox a little bit this week, but I do get passionate about the issues I see in the industry, and I do get passionate about delivering best value for buyers and sellers in the industry, because ultimately, they're our paymasters and they're the peoples that we really want to start looking after. So thank you for joining me again on another amazing webinar. We're here every week doing this, and it's an absolute pleasure and delight to do so. You can send your questions in to us through any one of the following methods. You can go to our website, which is WiggyWam.co.uk. That's WiggyWam.co.uk. You can set yourself a profile up there. You can explore our learning center and our broadcast section there. And you can send us messages directly to, myself, if you like, and send us in those questions, or to my colleague and co-founder, Chris. You can send them in via email, which is happytohelp@wiggywam.co.uk. That's happytohelp@wiggywam.co.uk. You can send your questions in via that. You can also find us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @WiggyWam_UK. So that's @WiggyWam_UK. And feel free to DM us your questions on Twitter. As I say, we're here every week. We're delighted to have you with us this week, and hopefully we'll see you on future webinars. Please do consider liking, sharing, subscribing to our channel, and also to share this video with your friends and family and your wider network. There are about 1 million people a year who need more help and support in moving, and have millions of questions, I'm sure, that need answering. So it's our delight and pleasure to provide that information to them. We're building up a huge knowledge database now of all of these questions that we've done over the course of the last 21 weeks. So hopefully somewhere in there, there's some pearls of wisdom that you can share with your friends and family. And we look forward to seeing you again on a future webinar very soon. Thanks for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for your time, and good luck. God bless, and see you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.